I will look at the matter and come back to the member. Questions for I will answer. Question number 1, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he agree with the Honourable Alfred Naro that some of the media are manufacturing the housing crisis, or does he agree there is a housing crisis given that Auckland has a shortage of 40,000 homes according to Auckland Council?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, no and no.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he not see that threatening and intimidating NGOs falls so far below acceptable standards of ministerial conduct that if he fails to take action against the minister who made those threats, it amounts to tacitly endorsing them?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, that's a bit rich coming from a Labor Party who invented intimidating and threatening people who don't agree with them. But I'll tell you what is below acceptable behaviour. What's below acceptable behaviour is having a policy that says they want more houses, but opposing actual developments, including voting against the Point England bill in this House yesterday.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Oh, point of order, Andrew Little.
Mr Speaker, that was a question that referred to ministerial standards and effectively his position on it. It didn't call for a discourse from the Prime Minister on his view about Labor's policies on housing. He hasn't addressed the question.
No, but when I reflect on the question, the tone of it, the suggestion of intimidating NGOs, the Prime Minister certainly took the opportunity to refer to that part in his answer. The latter part of his answer, I do accept, was probably not helpful in the order of the House. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Who does he blame for the shortage of homes in Auckland? Is it the media's fault, the Salvation Army's fault, the Council's fault, Aucklanders' fault, or does the buck stop with his government that's had 9 years to address the housing crisis and it's only grown worse every year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, all of those parties have contributed to what is now very significant positive progress building in Auckland. The one party that hasn't is the Labor Party, who have been opposing the Three Kings development and voting against the Point England enabling bill that will allow for thousands of houses to be built in Tamaki on conditions appropriate to the local tenants. So if there's anyone most directly to blame for stopping developments, it's the Labor Party.
Supplementary.
Order.
To the Salvation Army?
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Mr Speaker, does this Treasury briefing dated September 2016 to him show that the rate of Auckland house building has been less than what is needed to keep up with population growth the whole time he's been in power?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, there's all sorts of official guesses about how many houses Auckland might need. What we know is that there is the largest construction boom ever going on in Auckland, and house prices are flattening out and in some places falling. So clearly some demand is being met, but of course there needs to be a lot more built. That's why we have the $1 billion Housing Infrastructure Fund and the government building program, which will over the next few years continue the very strong growth in building going on in Auckland.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Do Statistics New Zealand reports show that home ownership has fallen in each of his 9 years in power, while housing costs have risen more than twice as fast as wages?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Statistics New Zealand reports don't cover the fact that the Labor Party's opposition to two of the largest developments in Auckland are driving up costs and rentals at the same time as in public they're saying they favour more houses in private thus stopping 2 large developments.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Taking that last answer as yes, does he expect to see a lift in home ownership this year?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, that will depend on whether the Labor Party starts supporting the Point England development, which will have an impact on thousands of houses in Tamaki, and whether they withdraw their opposition to the large-scale Three Kings development, which would enable well over 1,000 affordable homes to be built for constituents who vote for the Labor Party, as it happens.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Putting aside the Salvation Army, when will he finally apologise to Kiwi families for soaring house prices, skyrocketing rents and growing homelessness during his 9 years? Or is it someone else's fault?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, the people who should be apologising are the Labor Party for 2 reasons. One is that they gave the ARC the power in the early 2000s to set a rural-urban boundary, and from that time, new building in Auckland was strangled.
Order.
And it's taken us a number of years to unwind the damage. And the other reason they should apologise is because they're opposing large developments in Auckland. So their Kiwi build policy is in reality a no-build policy.
Order. Question number 2, David Seymour.